I know that you're choosing the 49ers to win just with the energy that you've brought to this stream, but do you have score predictions, and how are you feeling about this upcoming game confidence wise? Is there a way that you see the Lions winning? Because I hear that you brought your Deebo Samuel energy to the stream, but do you see a way that the Lions take over, and what are you anticipating?
Yeah, so I definitely do think there is a way for the Detroit Lions to win is if they can run the ball on the 49ers. And the 49ers do have a solid run defense, but when you do look at the 49ers, they are capable of giving up the run. Like that's something that they have had on film, even though teams don't run the ball for as many yards as they would like and stuff like that. The 49ers have gone up on teams a lot, like in point wise. So teams go away from the run and they start throwing it against the Niners. And they haven't been effective that way. The Niners have a good D line that could tee off. So I do think if the Detroit Lions could stick to their run game, and if they're able to consistently run the ball on the 49ers with their two good running backs, it could become a closer game than it should be. Now, at the end of the day, the Niners are going to sell out to stop the run.
Did you hear Kyle Shanahan said, when asked about Eric Armstead's performance against the Packers, he said that he thought he did well and stayed out in the game longer than they expected? To me, that was a red flag, because the injury report update, by the way, today was Deebo Samuel is 100% ready to go. The only two people were Oren Burks and Kalia Davis, right, who had just had his practice window opened. So Eric Armstead not on there, but apparently Kyle Shanahan has a limit on how much he thinks Eric Armstead can play through with that plantar fasciitis. Are you nervous that flares up as these games kind of stack up? Because coming into the playoffs, he took 6 games off and then had a bye week. Now he's, just played 7 days ago and is going to play again.
So it can flare up, but it's more from what I was understood from that plantar fasciitis. It's more of a pain tolerance. So like at this point, it's pain. So he's going to be getting injected with painkillers. So it's more of a pain tolerance at this point. So I think he continues to play. To continue the Brock.
But continue to play, but do you think he performs well? Because we're talking about, I do think, like, when you're talking about the Lions, there's the strength is their offense. And in my opinion, we've seen a setback with this defense. I think you have to credit them for keeping the 49ers in the game, although it seemed like the Packers kept walking down the field. They stopped them in the red zone multiple times, so they deserve their flowers for that. But I'm not comparing the 49ers defense to an average defense. I'm comparing them to my standard of the 49ers defense, which is not only are you not letting another team score, but you're not letting them walk down the field on you. So I've been a little bit underwhelmed, especially coming out of the bye week. I was like, ooh, like thinking about how physical and how much effort and energy they played with in the regular season coming out of the bye week. And I was a little bit disappointed in the defense. I mean, the front seven didn't get any sacks. Nick Bosa hasn't had a sack in 4 games. I know that he has pressures. Do you think he gets a sack against Jared Goff, who can't move, statue in the pocket? So they do have a good offensive line now, but injuries.
Two questions you asked. So I'll answer the first one. Arik Armstead did not play as well as I thought he did. I felt like he looked a little bit gassed, and it could be due to not playing. But I also felt he started picking it up and started playing a little bit better towards the end of the game. 2, I do think Nick Bosa gets a sack because Jared Goff walks into sacks all the time. But the third comment I'm going to have is for those who are in the comments in question why Brock Purdy has been hated by the national media. Actually, me and Josh Harper talked about that. There's a quick, if you go to my channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But there's a video that's like 12 to 16 minutes. And Josh Harper played in the NFL for a little while, played at Fresno State. He talks about why he's hated and why he is being disrespected by the national media. And he actually just go watch it like after the show and everything. But do go watch it and see why he.
Do you have like a 30-minute? Do you have 30 minutes? Do you have a 30-second elevator pitch? I'll go watch it, but I'm interested in is it just like his draft status?
No, not necessarily draft status. He actually
maybe how he looks.
He actually talks about how it's actually because of certain either media members or certain fans or a certain part of the fan base. And he talks about how essentially just talks about how like Brock has been propped up. He like Brock's played really damn well. It's not like he's not good. He goes, but there's a certain fan base that compares him to people. And certain name
Yeah, if you
quarterbacks
like
compares him to certain
overhype
people.
him, then people feel the need to like combat the overhype, and then it looks like hate, but you're like, no, we're just saying that he's not Joe Montana. Like
Yeah.
this is actually not hate. I'm just trying to trying to settle down. Like we can say, hey, he's doing very well without writing an athletic article on how he is similar to the greatest quarterback of all times spreadsheet.
So definitely take a look at that one. I know some of you guys want to have that conversation, but it's just so we can move
Definitely.
on from that conversation. But
Yeah.
he knows a lot more than me. The way he worded it was really well, and he explained it really well. So make sure you guys, if you guys want to listen or watch more about that, I do give my comments on that as well. So you guys should go check that
Perfect.
out.
Everyone go like and subscribe to Marco's channel, Clutch Gene Sports. That's awesome. I'll go listen to that too.
But I do want to hear your prediction and what happens. How do the 49ers? Are you any concerns from the Detroit Lions?
That's the hard thing, right? Like I think that everyone wanted to see Brock Purdy have that game-winning drive. Like my initial takeaway was like, oh, this kind of the Packers game kind of crushed a lot of narratives. Like 49ers can only win one way. Well, instead they won, an ugly, tough, gritty game. And Brock Purdy, led his team from a comeback. Kyle Shanahan never can come back in the fourth quarter. He came back and won the game. Like you would think walking out of that game, I would feel more confident. But for some reason, even though I like wanted to see those things, I was like, why did they just almost lose to the Packers, who are, a good team, but definitely when you talk about being a year away, they're a very young team. Their own fan base did not anticipate that they would be here. Their own fan base was, their defensive coordinator already got fired, and they were trying to say that their QB sucked like 10 games ago. So, my takeaway was not initially confidence in them for going through that. And I do think that affects the way that I see the Lions game. I think prior to the Packers game, I thought that no NFC team was kind of on the 49ers level. I anticipated this kind of like steamroll through the NFC vibe that did not happen against the Packers. And so I can anticipate it being a closer game. But I do think that the 49ers win. You can't, if you're Kyle Shanahan, the pressure on you to finally make it over the hump and actually, win a Super Bowl, get back to the Super Bowl. You don't want to lose to Jared Goff. He's, I know he's coming back. He's from the Bay Area, but I feel like it's such a disappointment with all the money that you give to that D line if they don't get home and get to Jared Goff and make him uncomfortable and cause him to throw some erratic passes. I'm anticipating that they get an interception, whether, Ward, crazy, Dre Greenlaw catches it, whatever. I think that they should be able to, especially with the injuries on the offensive line. The Lions have had a really good offensive line this year, but they have two guys who are injured. Whether or not they play, could still be injured while playing. I think that I would be extremely disappointed. I've been kind of confused about Nick Bosa's regression this entire year, thinking at first that it was a slow start due to taking off the offseason. But yeah, he really needs to show up. He needs to get a sack. I've been disappointed with Chase Young. Last against the Packers, he made an effort. He wasn't even fully in his stance. Ball gets snapped. Made an effort to get to Jordan Love. Jordan Love ran 3 feet away. And not Nick Bosa, Chase Young just stopped. Like he had like 0-second effort. Like he was like, oh, I didn't get to him. I'm just going to watch the other people try now. And I was like, I was like looking at the TV, like, keep running. What are you doing? Like, just because you didn't get him, you don't get to like give up halfway through and just like be like, oh, I have a really good seat at this game. So yeah, I really hope that now I don't have the statistics down, but I was listening to, I always really like, there's a podcast on the Gold Standard with Rob Guerrera and now I'm forgetting her name. I think it's Megan. It's a girl, but I really like her. She always like has a ton of statistics and stuff ready. And she actually had some stuff to back up that Javon Hargrave has played really well this year. But I'm hoping that they get some pressure on, not even pressure. I'm hoping that they sack Jared Goff, that they startle him. He starts kind of, second guessing himself. No Sean McVay to tell him where to throw the ball. I'm terrible. I still see Jared Goff as like Rams Jared Goff. So I'm like, there's no way that they could lose to this guy. But I know that like there's a Lions fan in the chat, and he's probably like, that's not the Jared Goff we know, and I do like an underdog story, and it's kind of funny that, do you feel this way too? Like, I feel like if you're not a fan of the 49ers, I think people look at the Lions like the underdog story, and they look at Jared Goff like the underdog because he's kind of having like that re-emergence of his career. But he was drafted number 1. Like, Brock Purdy should still be the underdog. Like, he was Mr. Irrelevant. Oh, freaking speaking of Eric Armstead went up there and had the weirdest comment. He was asked about Brock Purdy's success and if it surprised him. And he was like, yeah, he could do nothing else for the rest of his career, and he would be like the most successful person ever for what was expected of him. And then said something like, it's really shocking what he's doing. I don't understand it at all. And I was like, I don't know, just the affect, because he kind of has like a low
monotone.
Yeah, like that. And I was like, I don't know. It didn't like instill, like when Fred Warner was asked the same exact question, Fred Warner was like, Brock Purdy's a soldier. He's the best guy on this team. Like, he's going to carry us to the Super Bowl and then like get 7 more, like that type of energy. And then friggin' Eric Armstead was like, yeah, it's pretty shocking. Don't know how it's happening, actually. And I was like, are you supposed to be like, oh, I noticed in practice or something? Like, he was like, I don't get it at all, but
straight
hey, we're here.
Blunt as he could be answered.
Exactly. But I feel like I went on 7 tangents. I expect the 49ers to win the game is my answer to that question.
So now I expect them to win as well. So my reason,
I think it'll be higher scoring. Yeah. I want to know your score, because you kind of said that you thought it could be old school football. And when I think of that, I think of like Packers game where it was really defensive, run game, lower, no offensive scores on that one, but not like that, but like a lower scoring. When I think old school, I think lower scoring. But when I think of Lions right now, I think of higher scoring.
So it has an old school mentality, but I don't think it's an old school game, like in the sense of like these teams can't throw the ball.
Mostly because the Lions can't keep up defensively.
Yeah, so like it's like their defense. It's going to be a high scoring game, like, but it's going to be an old school mentality of you're going to see hard hitting, running the ball. The trenches is going to win the game. Now, I do have concerns for the 49ers secondary. I do believe that Logan Ryan is not going to start. I think Jair Brown gets to start, which gives me more confidence.
I agree.
And then, but for Ambry Thomas matched up on anyone in their receiving core, it's a concern. That concerns me. But my optimism is the 49ers are capable of running the ball on the Lions. Now, if you look at the Lions, everyone likes to talk about how they could run the ball effectively, this, and that. Rachaad White last week, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he averaged 6.1 yards a carry. If you look at the Rams, Kyron Williams averaged 4.7. The game before that, the Vikings, if you go even back to the Vikings game, Ty Chandler averaged 5.8 yards a carry. So like if you go back to like the averages, they're pretty solid averages the last 3 to 4 weeks for the running backs. Now they're just not running the ball at a high rate. And I think that's where Kyle could look at, like, you know what? You actually can run the ball on this team. So for me, I definitely think the 49ers do score a lot of points. I do think it's going to be a closer game, but I do think the Detroit Lions score a late touchdown in the fourth quarter that makes it closer. And I think the 49ers win 35-31. They win by 4 points in this game. Like but it'll be 35-20, whatever, 24 before they score. And they're going to score a touchdown late in the game. And then the 49ers have a couple of first down runs that are able to kill out the clock. I think that's how it's going to kind of roll out. But before you give your score prediction, I have a question for you that you have to answer after your score prediction. Who has more pressure on them, Kyle Shanahan or Brock Purdy?
Well, I like that. I like 34 for the 49ers. And then I'm torn between wanting to go 21 or wanting to go 24. And my tornness with that is I feel like Dan Campbell is like never going to try to get a field goal. He's always going to go for the touchdown. That almost makes me want to do 28. Maybe I should do 28 Lions, 34 49ers. I like that. And then who has more pressure, Brock Purdy or Kyle Shanahan?
Or if you want, I could go first.
Yeah, I want you to go for like Kyle Shanahan, because he's never won like he needs to win a Super Bowl, and at this point, like, can you blame your quarterback? But then Brock Purdy, because they're gonna blame the quarterback, even though you're like, oh, how many years can you do that? I definitely feel like they would still. So my initial reaction is like probably should be Kyle Shanahan, but probably will be Brock Purdy. But I'm interested in your take.
So I have two different opinions on it. I think Kyle Shanahan from the fan base should have more pressure from the entire fan base and the ownership, but he's not, because it's Kyle Shanahan and the ownership loves him and they understand that there's no coach at this level who is as good of Kyle Shanahan or better. Like, how do you upgrade? So the pressure's kind of deviated from, like, it kind of goes away from him, because even if they lose, it's his. He's not getting fired. Like, there's no way the Niners fired him. Now the reason why it's more pressure on Brock Purdy is because, one, we just found out that Kyle Shanahan was trying to go to Tom Brady last offseason, but Brock Purdy was coming off an injury. But if you look at it, if a Kyle Shanahan who's constantly trying to upgrade at the quarterback position, if he feels, you know what, Brock Purdy didn't play well against the Packers. Brock Purdy, if they lose and he struggle, obviously if we lose is because Brock Purdy struggles against the Lions. If we lose, or we can't run the ball, whatever, because they're selling out and they're forcing Brock to win, then I feel like Brock Purdy could have more pressure on him because, one, the national media, two, Kyle Shanahan's going to feel like, you know what, he hasn't played well over the last couple of games. He struggled against an elite Ravens defense. He struggled against a Browns team. He struggled in the rain. The past couple of times he's played in the rain. So, like, you start having those questions as a head coach and as an organization. And if he does struggle, that's, I think, more pressure on him. But I don't necessarily think there's pressure on Brock either, because the moment he took the Niners to the NFC Championship as a rookie, I think it is the moment he set himself up for life as a quarterback in the NFL. This year, he played like a high-level quarterback, so you still have to back him up because he's only in his second year. So I think there is more pressure on him, but I also think he deserves the leeway if the Niners aren't able to get past the Detroit Lions, because he's earned the right to struggle in a couple of these games. He's won playoff games for the 49ers. He won late in the fourth quarter for the 49ers. So I think when you look at it in certain aspects, there's definitely questions and concerns, but I do think the reason why Brock has more pressure is because the Niners will have conversations, the national media will have conversations about things. And at the end of the day, I think Brock is capable of being the Niners quarterback for the next couple of years, the next 10, whatever many years. But it does, even if he loses and the Niners decide to move off of him, there's going to be a team that thinks he's better than their starter. So he'll have a starting job in the NFL at some point. And at the worst comes to worst, he's an NFL career backup, and he is the best backup quarterback in the NFL by far. So either way, there's no pressure on him. Like, he's literally set himself up for life. So he needs to go out there and play balls to the wall.
Pressure because, like, he wants you're comparing him to like his draft status, but I think he is comparing himself to wanting to prove, like, all season he's kind of wanted to be like, I'm not a game manager, I'm a gunslinger, I am elite. So I think he has put pressure on himself, and because he's on a team that's so successful, much like Jimmy G, like, don't you kind of feel like it ruined Jimmy G's reputation that, like, if Jimmy G would have made that throw and they would have won the Super Bowl, I think Jimmy G is looked at as a completely different quarterback, even though fans could probably still with a win could have said, like, Jimmy G was carried. The media as a whole and the NFL as a whole, I think, wouldn't have talked about him in that way, because they would have been like, well, he, like, got them to the win, you know, he got them a win. But because they lost, it was like he was carried there, and then in the moment when he finally needed to show something, he couldn't, like, live up to what he couldn't live up to being good enough. Where Brock Purdy is going to be like, I want to live up to this standard. So if they fail, it also, I mean, probably just depends on, like, how the game goes, right? Like, does Brock Purdy act like he does in the Ravens game, where, yeah, you can criticize it was a bad game plan from Kyle Shanahan because there was a lot of passing, but they were walking down the field, getting all the way to the red zone. So whether or not you thought they should have run the ball or not, which I agree, like, I think it was in that first half, Christian McCaffrey had only run the ball or touched the ball like 11 times, which is crazy. But they were having like yardage wise, they were having offensive success. The only problem was when they got to friggin' the red zone, Brock Purdy would lose his mind and throw the ball to the other team. So I think if it's a game like that, it's going to be like, well, clearly this is on Brock Purdy. But if it's a game kind of like the Packers game where it's a bad run defense and you're like, for no reason trying to pass the ball and you're like not playing to your team's strengths and you're making blunders like he did going into the first half or the going into halftime, I think that then potentially more people would be like, hey, this is a pattern with Kyle Shanahan where in big games he like makes really erratic decisions and kind of outthinks his game plan. So it can also be like game plan or how the game is lost type of thing.
And I want to hit that comment Al Bundy says, because he says clutch he is at clutch, saying he is at worst best a backup is a Freudian slip. Not like what I mean by that is worst comes to worst, right? Like in the sense of he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I do believe he is. Now for him, even if he loses and the Niners sour on it, Kyle sours on the decision to keep rolling with Brock, I think he's done enough in the NFL to become a starting quarterback in the NFL. And if he fails there, then he would become a elite level backup quarterback. And that's where, I mean, I'm not saying he's a backup quarterback in the NFL. You took the comment the wrong way, but I might have also worded it the wrong way as well.
I totally understood what you were saying. Like, and that's kind of what Eric Armstead was saying too, right? Like, even if he were to fall off a cliff, which like people are not anticipating he was doing, and you're not anticipating that he's doing, like you were saying you think he's going to be a starter in the NFL no matter what. But even if he were to like just fall off a cliff, he's had immense success. And if he became a backup, he would be the best backup in the NFL right now, right?
Absolutely.
That's how, like when I was listening to you talk, I didn't.
If his career was to go complete 360, like with the pressure that's put on him, which I don't think it will, if his pressure and everything, like the Niners sour on him, and after a year of another, because I think either way, the pressure that is put on him, I think either way, he's still the Niners starting quarterback next year, unless Kyle's goes, you know what, Kirk Cousins is out there. I've always wanted Kirk. Like if something like that happens, which is extremely odd, and I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's realistic. But if that was to happen, I think at the end of the day, Brock's a starting quarterback somewhere. He goes and starts, and if he goes to that team and he struggles, at the worst comes to worst, he is the best backup quarterback in the league. I'm not saying he's a backup. I'm saying worst comes to worst. He's set himself up for success as long as he wants in the NFL. Final comments, I would say shout out to everyone for tuning in. Shout out to the Lions fans for tuning in.
Yeah, like and subscribe. There's been Lion fans all throughout these comments.
And hopefully it comes out how I expect it. So let's go.